Hello, I'm back to give a little bit more of a description on all of the AP classes I've taken in high school, 8 in total. If you've seen my AP score reaction video, you saw I had a webcam. No webcam for this one because sound desync is fun. Alright, so let's start it off with AP Physics 1. This was actually one of, if not my favorite class in high school. It's extremely difficult. AP Physics 1, if you've seen the passage rates for the test in any year, the 5 rate is like 7%. It is a very hard class, but I really enjoy it. Honestly, how I learned most of the content in this class was through labs that were provided. Definitely paying attention in the labs and giving yourself an in-person idea of the topics you're discussing makes the ideas and equations kind of come to life in a way that makes more sense. For somebody that wants to go into like a math, engineering, obviously physics, I feel like taking AP Physics is important, and I feel like AP Physics 1 gives a good baseline that will really help you. AP Human Geography, for me, this was the only way to take an honors or higher up AP History class sophomore year. So, AP Human Geography. I thought this class was kind of boring and dragged, but I feel like it is an easier AP test, so if you're just in it for the college credit, it's definitely worth it. I think that human geography does have some interesting topics on how the world works, but I think a lot of it isn't applicable to people in certain areas. Like I know that there's an entire topic on like agriculture and the agricultural processes where I feel that unit is extremely long, and also me in like a suburban neighborhood knowing how agriculture works was important, but I feel like a class doesn't need to go into it to the extent that this one does, I guess. AP US Government and Politics, I mean, it's your classic government class. You learn how everything works. I think also going back to these two, the workload for AP Human Geography isn't bad at all. And AP Physics 1, the labs were quite a bit of work, but besides that, it really doesn't have that much work. AP Government also, workload, not very much. Homework levels on all three of these classes, not big. I feel that U.S. government, it goes over all the basic ideas and topics you need to know in the scope of the country's government and how it works. I feel like there's nothing more that needs to be said about government. English Lang, very, very extensive amount of work for any AP English class. Lang is so many essays. I wrote so many essays in this class. I can't believe it. We had times where we wrote 3 essays in a week. It is a lot of essays, and everything is handwritten. At least it was for me. And also, there's reading that goes along with it. I know SparkNotes is a lot of people's friend. I never used it, so I read a lot of books I didn't want to, and it took quite a bit of time. English classes are a lot of time, so be aware of that if you are going into an AP English class. But I think it is very useful, if you saw my AP ranking video, that you do really get better as a writer, because I actually took a dual enrollment English class after I took English Lang, and I thought it was much easier, and I was a so much better writer because of what I did in Lang. Calc BC, it is difficult topics. Obviously, you're taking up to second semester college topics in math, and it is quite hard. But I had a really good teacher for Calc BC who went through things in a way where people understood it really well. And also, if you look at the 5 rate for BC is super high because the score you need to get it is pretty low. So I think BC getting a good score on it, if you're in the class, it's attainable. And I think if you have the choice of doing AB, BC, or just BC, I think just doing BC is the correct option because it goes for the same credit and it's not that much you're missing out on by not taking AB. And I don't think the BC work rate is that much. I had a homework maybe once every week or 2 weeks. It wasn't bad at all compared to other math classes. So I think that BC is a really good class, and I actually enjoyed it. And I don't have to take Calc 1 or Calc 2, which is great. Computer Science A, I went into this a little bit, but to go a little bit more into detail, basically how Computer Science A works, at least how it worked in my school, is you get this website that has all of the units and chapters in Computer Science A, and you just follow along with the provided coding activities and assignments in the program, and that's basically how you learn everything. And then that makes it kind of difficult because you kind of can go back and get the answers for everything. So when you go to get to the test, you have to take the initiative to actually learn what everything is without everything just being provided to you. The workload for computer science A is pretty small. If you know what you're doing, you'll almost always be ahead of the game or right on the game, and you won't have to spend that much time doing anything. But if you get stuck, it is definitely important to ask for help in AP Computer Science A, because I know I've seen once you get behind, you can almost never catch up. So it's pretty important that you stay on task and actually do the work in the process that you're supposed to do it. Comparative government, I think that this class has a lot of work just because of how it's structured. It's only a semester class, and you need to learn about 6 countries, their governments, and the beginning topics in the class, all in a semester period. So I think that contributes to it being a super high workload. I think it's pretty boring, but if you're interested in how the countries collaborate together and governments around the world, I do think it is an interesting class if this is something that you want to go into like politics or international relations. So I think it's a solid class for somebody who wants to get into those fields. The workload, again, it's high, but not in the way you would think. Mine was very project based, I would say, where you had this one giant project that took up quite a bit of time. And then you had tests and quizzes very frequently because, again, semester class. So I think comparative gov, the work really depends on the teacher. My teacher kind of just gave the notes, and then it was up to you to really learn the topics and take notes from that and apply it to the test. So I think comparative gov is very teacher dependent. Chemistry, on the other hand, I had a lot of work for chemistry. I will show a picture of the binder that I had for this class. It is a 2-inch binder. It is full to the brim. There is so much in this binder, and it is notes, homework, extra work, AP review. It takes effort to get a good score on this test. You can just fly by, and if it doesn't matter to you, you can do well in the class, but the test may come as pretty difficult. So I think that AP chemistry, what you get out of it is what you put into it. I don't think that could be said the same for all AP classes, but chem is definitely, you get out of it what you put into it. So it is important to take things you already know about chemistry, which you might have from a previous class, and don't forget that into AP Chem, because it's really going to help you to stay ahead of the game and not have to spend time catching up on figuring out what the basics are. Now, one thing about AP Chem is you don't have to memorize a lot of equations, unlike physics. Chemistry, you get an equation sheet, a lot of them are provided to you. So don't focus a lot on the equations themselves, but more on applying them, because the equations are going to be there. You just need to know what you need to use, what equation for, and how to apply that to the question you're given. So I think it's a hard test. It's confusing to read. That's the hard part. I think it's comparable. My teacher always said it was comparable to like an ACT science section. I don't know how true that really is, but I think there is like a readability aspect to it that you do need to understand how to read the question and then know what to look for in the answers that relates to the question. So again, AP chemistry, it's a lot of work, but it is worth it because getting out of college chemistry is great. A lot of these, they can be taken for maybe a gen ed credit, but like BC, chemistry, Lang, you're going to need those types of subjects anyway. So it's definitely important to have the good scores on those tests. So that is a, I guess, in-depth maybe overview of AP classes. And I think it's important to remember that even if you don't do well on an AP class, there is always the opportunity to take those classes later in a college setting and not have one test determine everything. If you do good in an AP class, it's great. If you do bad, it doesn't really matter. So I think just give it your best no matter what, and that's all you can really get out of it. So I think that AP is a great program. I know it gets bashed on a lot, but I think the credit you can get out of it is super important. I've gotten a ton of credit just from taking 8 AP classes, and that isn't much in the grand scheme of things. There are people that take a lot more than I do. So I think it is important to get involved in AP classes. It'll help you so much once you get into college, and making sure that you have the baseline to not stress yourself out extensively there by having to take a ton of classes. So yeah, that's my basic overview of AP classes.